Today is World Rainforest Day, and at the British Lichen Society we are delighted to be involved with the celebrations. My name is April Windle and I chair the Education Committee for the Society, and right now I am stood in one of the finest temperate rainforests that we have here on Dartmoor. These woodlands are teeming with biodiversity, and everywhere that you turn you are greeted with a rich tapestry of green, where the boulders are carpeted in mosses and liverworts and the trees are cloaked in lichens, and it is these species that are the essence of a rainforest. These habitats are tucked right up against the west, where they receive high amounts of rain that falls consistently over the course of the year. They are also subject to a relatively mild climate where there isn't any large temperature fluctuations between the summer and the winter months. These climatic conditions, coupled with the clean air and the woodland's ancient origin, is what has resulted in the spectacular development of rainforest biodiversity, where the defining features of this habitat are the lichens, the bryophytes and the ferns. Lichens are richly abundant in a site like this, and when I surveyed this site back in 2024 with a colleague, we recorded over 200 species of lichen. Now, lichens are a special type of fungus that partner up with either an algae or a cyanobacteria, and only when all of these different life forms come together will you get the formation of a lichen. Now, lichens are really important in a rainforest context, and the reason they are a defining feature of these habitats is because certain species have a really distinct distributional shift going from east to west as a result of the climate, and this is why we use them to indicate the habitat. The main lichen community that you get here in this woodland is the Parmelian community. And this is a collective of species that occupies the leached acid bark in high rainfall situations. And as you can see on this oak trunk here, we have a fantastic assemblage of what we call white splats and green leafy lichens. And these are on every single tree that you can see in this area. In the southwest, you only find really high quality examples of this community confined to the areas of the peninsula where we have high rainfall. So places like Dartmoor, where we are now, Exmoor and Bodmin Moor too. And there's one species that really dominates this community, and it's called Hypotrichina levigata, or the loop lichen. And you get a lot of different types of loop lichens in this community. But this one in particular has these beautiful powdery tips to the lobes of the lichen, and that powder is comprised of the fungal and the algal component, which can then blow off in the wind and colonise another tree within the area. When we conducted the lichen survey in 2024, we also found a really scarce species of loop lichen, which we call Hypotrichina endochlora. Now, superficially, this species does look like the other loop lichen, but when you scratch the upper surface, it is bright sulphur yellow opposed to white like you get in the other species. Now, Hypotrichina endochlora is really sensitive to its surrounding environments and only grows in woodlands of very high quality. So the fact that we found it in 2 different sites within this woodland valley is absolutely brilliant. Down here in the south of England, you get some really interesting lichens within these rainforests that you don't necessarily find growing further north in places like Scotland. And one of these species is growing in great abundance up and down this oak trunk. This is Parmelinopsis hircescens, or Desperate Dan Jr., and it's a warm temperate to subtropical species of lichen, but it's growing on many of the oaks within this woodland valley. Now, this leafy lichen has very minute lobes, but across the surface is a really dense covering of ascidia. And these are small finger-like projections that again contain the fungus and the algae, and they break off, blow in the wind and colonise another tree. Now, out of the tips of these little ascidia are these fantastic whiskers, which we call cilia, and that's why it gets its name Desperate Dan, because it's like the hairs on Desperate Dan's chin. Now, I've stopped at this tree because it supports a really impressive population of a lichen called Hypertrichina taylorensis, which is also known as one of the loop lichens or tumbling kittens. And the reason it gets this name is because it doesn't have any structures in order for it to reproduce. So the mechanism that it takes is by twisting its lichen body, or the lichen thallus, around on itself, which then breaks off, and these fragments then colonise lower down the tree. This species is best represented on the upper limits of this woodland, on these large oak trees that are subject to high light levels. And this is a really lovely temperate rainforest species and is one of the scarcer members of the Parmelian community. So it's lovely to see it growing in such large quantities within this area. Moving away from the more showy and charismatic species, I want us to now delve into the miniature world of crustose lichens. And there are 3 species on this tree which I find particularly exciting. Now, the first one is one called Mycoblastus sanguinarius, and this is leaving little white patches all over the trunk, and it has these fantastic black fruits on the surface that when you knock them off, it leaves a little red stain. And this red stain is a pigment that is found within the centre of the lichen. The second species on this trunk is one called Mycaria stipitata. And although this is less exciting in appearance, it tells you so much about the woodland, because this is an extremely western species that likes oceanic to hyper-oceanic climates. But when you peer down the hand lens and you have a little look, you'll see sort of a dull green lichen body, or the thallus, and all across it, it has these little simple to branched pycnidia, and those pycnidia are where the spores are kept, and they're the reproductive units of the lichen. The final crust on this trunk is Bryobolimbia sanguineo-atra, and again, it's got a bit of a green thallus with these blackish to red fruits all over the surface. And the reason that I find all of these 3 species so exciting is because they're such good indicators of the habitat. They tell you so much about the climate in which they're found, the air quality, and the ecological continuity of the site. And that is why they are absolutely brilliant. Today is a celebration of these remarkable habitats and to raise the profile of our temperate rainforests here in Britain and Ireland. At the British Lichen Society, we work tirelessly to promote and educate and conserve lichens across all habitats here, but especially those in our temperate rainforests. Our membership is dedicated to collecting the critical data that underpins management, where our national database has over 2 million lichen records, and we also have specialist input into policy and legislation. For more information, please go to the British Lichen Society's website, but for now I encourage you all to go and experience firsthand these phenomenal habitats for yourself.